And these are going to be a bunch of different clips. Some are going to be news clippings from court documents. Some are going to be comments made. It's a bunch of different clips from this video.
Take a listen.
Attorney and Mullins' close friend Daniel Dotson said that the defendant never threatened him or Judge Mullins, but that he was so concerned about Mickey's demeanor, he contacted the Kentucky Bar Association to determine what action he could take. Dotson said that Mickey was, quote, criminally insane. Whitesburg Police Chief Tyrone Fields told Dotson that on Wednesday night, the night prior to the shooting, that Mickey had called him, and when he got off the phone, he told his wife, "That son of a bitch has lost his mind," in reference to the defendant. Christine Bowling, LCSO staff, told the KSP that the staff had stated they were concerned about Mickey due to his very strange behavior. Specifically, the day prior to the shooting, the sheriff told her that Daniel Dotson had told him to give him money and kill himself, or they were going to kill Caroline and Lila, the wife and daughter. LaShawna Frazier, staff of LCSO, told KSP that she had asked Dr. McDougal to move up the sheriff's upcoming doctor's appointment because she was very worried about him. Frazier stated that the sheriff was encouraged to go to the doctor because he had some kind of psychosis going on. Frazier stated that en route to the doctor, the sheriff stopped by his wife's office to check on her. Sherry Stines, the defendant's aunt, told KSP Detective Anthony Trotter that Mickey was concerned that someone was on the back street near where he lived watching his house. She stated he didn't act like himself. She stated that he could not sleep. Sherry Stines called and informed Trotter that Mickey had called her on the day of the shooting and asked about where his grandmother nicknamed Bones was that day. Bones had been dead for 3 years at the time of that call.
So, as you can tell, the defense is using comments made by all of these witnesses about the mental state of Mickey Stines. He was not in his right mind, and that is literally leading right up to the crime. So, these are developments that are very real. And I'll just say, like, as a prosecutor, when you have to make decisions like this, it's very, very difficult because we can look at this and be like, oh, obviously he's overcharged, just lessen the charge, take a plea deal. His diminished capacity, he had that issue. He's not guilty by reason of insanity. They don't have that in Kentucky, but this is how you can get it down based on the mens rea, the mindset criminally that a defendant has. So let's just do that easy, but it's not that easy. Right? Like, you're a prosecutor, you're fighting for justice. If this guy really did this, it's dangerous. I don't know how it works in Kentucky, but in Florida, you do your mental health evaluation and eventually you can get out. It's obviously not guilty by reason of insanity, but what is the sentence going to be? Is he still a danger to the community? How can you fight for the victim and the victim's family? Which, again, all the public sentiment and thoughts maybe the victim's not that great of a guy, that can also affect how a prosecutor looks at this and fighting for this justice. And what does this justice look like? And was Mickey Stines, did he actually help the community by doing this? Doesn't mean he's not going to get punished, right? Of course, vigilante justice is not justice. And we've talked about that in other cases, whether it's Luigi Mangione, and people talk about, oh, that's great, he's a hero that he did this. Like, taking someone's life is never the answer, in my opinion, unless obviously it's in self-defense, which neither of those two cases are really claiming that. But it's a difficult proposition and situation for a prosecutor to be met with in trying to make this decision. All right, let's listen to the next clip here.
Again, this is from the interviews that the Kentucky State Police did. An attorney named Daniel Dotson also told the Kentucky State Police that he spoke to Judge Kevin Mullins and told him that Mickey was, quote, losing it and, quote, couldn't take this kind of pressure, in reference to the civil suit involving, quote, some crack bleep wanting money.
So, Mickey Stines can't take this kind of pressure. He was losing it. So what is his involvement in this lawsuit? What is everybody else's involvement in this lawsuit? How did we get here? Why is Mickey Stines involved? Would you ever expect something like this? Has he ever done something like this in the past? Very interesting. It's interesting to get all these comments about all these people that saw signs, yet nobody did anything at the time.
Ponder.
All right. So, and I'm going to put this back up. So the man on the left who is wearing like the black undershirt, the older guy out of the two that are not Vinnie Politan, that is one of the lawyers involved in the civil lawsuit. So we're going to listen to a little clip. They're going to, look at some more documents, and then we're going to hear a little bit from this lawyer about what was Mickey Stines' involvement. Why was he a defendant in this lawsuit?
What was revealed in these papers filed by Mickey Stines' attorney in the same interview, attorney Daniel Dotson ponders, so he's thinking out loud, ponders if Judge Mullins was supplying information in the civil suit and suggests that the Kentucky State Police talked to Ned Pillersdorf to determine if Mullins was supplying information because Mullins, quote, thought Mickey was trying to get him. Ned, what does that mean to you? And were you getting fed information by the judge?
So this is Ned, the guy that they were just talking about. And so now these are people like speculating, but these are lawyers involved. These are people being interviewed by the police. These are people that the defense is going to use as witnesses. Did Mickey think Mullins was sharing information? And is that why he did this? Because if that's why he did this, then that hurts your defense, in my opinion, because that's a very good motive and he knows exactly what he's doing. Or is it another delusion that Mullins was never doing that? Mickey Stines was just so paranoid and he had a mental break. He was literally losing it. Was Mullins paranoid that Mickey Stines was going to try to get him? So much going on when you have this type of corruption, and it starts to eat at people from the inside out, and it all starts to crumble, which good, it should. And you see how these lawyers filing these lawsuits shine a light on it, and you start shaking the trees and see what happens, and they turn on each other. There is an element to that as well. So let's hear what Ned has to say.
To get back at Mickey because the judge thought Mickey was trying to get him?
Nobody was supplying me information. I was not a very popular person.
Nobody was supplying him information. So if this is something that Mickey Stines swore was true and knew was true, and he swore it, more delusions and paranoia, more evidence of a mental break, more arguments for Mickey Stines' defense lawyer.
In the lecture courthouse after we filed the lawsuit. And, what's really clear from all of this, you said it, there's been some active delusional thinking going on. And in this case, I think the delusional thinking with these kind of paranoid conspiracies, to be clear, Stines was named in the lawsuit, but actually in his official capacity.
So what does that mean? Stines was named in the lawsuit, but in his official capacity. What does that mean? Because that makes a big difference than if you name, and again, we're kind of getting a preview of who is Karen Reed suing and why. If it's Proctor and Yuri Buchanan and Tully, what in their official capacity as law enforcement? Personally, are you in a position where you have wrongdoing yourself? Or is it the fact that you supervised and didn't train and didn't stop wrongdoing that you are in charge of? There's a big difference, right? In being like a negligent boss versus perpetrating these horrible crimes that they're alleging in these lawsuits. So let's hear his explanation.
To understand the lawsuit, it was that Stines' deputy, Fields, who pled guilty to sexually extorting several women, and where Stines was named was that he knew or should have known this was going on. So there was no real active allegations that Stines was in on the sex. We thought there was circumstantial evidence that he knew or should have known. But, who'd have thunk it that when we filed this lawsuit, and my co-counsel took Stines' deposition, I was there for some of it on Monday, who'd have thunk it that 3 days later he'd shoot the judge? It was a strange deposition. Stines was, he was asked, simple questions, long pauses, no answers. I thought there was something going on, but I had no idea there was all these paranoid, hallucinating thoughts going through his mind. I just thought he was odd.
So he says he didn't know what was going on in his mind. It was kind of a simple definition. It wasn't, difficult questions. It wasn't, he basically was saying, because, I think it was Mickey Stines' lawyer himself, because he's given some interviews that we've watched, saying, oh, he's getting deposed and there's all this pressure. If you're looking at this guy does not look like he's a jerk and really putting the screws to Mickey Stines in this deposition. And from my perspective, it's like, was this even that stressful of a deposition? And again, to a lawyer, no big deal. Remember from the Don Adelson case, it's like, oh, no big deal, this litigation. It's like, to normal people, it is a big deal. To people who don't do this every day, it is a big deal. It might not be for this lawyer, but to Mickey Stines, obviously, he said, I didn't know all this crap that was going on in his head. It even sounds like this lawyer is being helpful to Mickey Stines.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, what are your thoughts here on?
All right. So that was all from that clip from the lawyer. And we're going to jump ahead a little bit. And they're going to talk more about personally what Mickey Stines was looking at and what his maybe liability was, or potentially what was, depos are stressful. I agree. I tell clients that all the time. It's like when we talk about filing a lawsuit, I'm like, listen, it's your decision if you want to file a lawsuit or not. Doesn't make a difference to me. It's part of my job. Do it every day. But to you, it's going to make a big difference. And I explained to them what litigation is like, because it's a very big deal. It's very stressful. It's your case, your life that's being dug into, your time that's being taken, right? It's a job for lawyers at the end of the day. And we care about our clients, and it's very important, but it's still a job.
Stines be personally responsible for money? Is there an insurance carrier who has coverage? Does the county cover it? How does that work? So I'm trying to understand his extreme level of stress, whether it comes from losing money, or is it losing reputation? Or I'm trying to understand how the lawsuit, in the end, if he lost, would personally impact Mickey Stines.
You know, my speculation is I don't think it was money. I think it was more so that his deputy, who was also the ankle monitor person who engaged in the sexual extortion, was just so close to him. And I think that, you know, we're talking about a person obviously who's paranoid and delusional and psychotic.
This lawyer says Mickey Stines is paranoid, delusional, and psychotic. That's checking all the boxes that the defense wants to get this culpability dropped down from the highest crime to a lesser included. And this is not somebody that I think wants to help Mickey Stines, by the way.
I don't think the money aspect had anything to do with it. I just think, you know, looking back, I guess we just underestimated the impact the lawsuit had on the people involved. And we had a sheriff who, you know, melted down, whatever you want to use. But, you know, looking back, it's just an astonishing series of events. But I guess the lesson learned is, you know, when you file a lawsuit like this, you sometimes wonder how it impacts people. And it's distressing in the sense that, you know, we filed a lawsuit that led to somebody dying. And that does bother me. You know, on the other hand, I suspect that Stines has probably a pretty legitimate mental illness defense. That's how I look at it as a criminal defense lawyer. But it's no telling how this case is going to turn out.
Oh,
it is a death penalty case.
I know.
So even he thinks it's a pretty good mental illness defense, which again is very different state to state. It's not guilty by reason of insanity in Kentucky, but it does drop it down from a death penalty type of case. So that's really interesting to me that he said all that. And I do agree, like what we lawyers do in these cases really affects people's lives. And that's why we should think about it before we do it. Now, when you're calling out corruption and bad actors and taking them to account, and they do something like this, you cannot feel guilty about it. You cannot feel like this is your fault. That's why every decision you make, you try to make the right decision. You try to do what you believe to be right with what your belief system is, your worldview is, the people you respect, the advice you get. And when you do that, you're going to be wrong sometimes, right? You're not always going to be right. You're not going to bat 1,000. But if you do that, you can lay your head down on the pillow at night. And fighting this corruption and suing the people that wronged these women that were in very vulnerable positions, abused their power. Not only did you do it for them, but you protected so many people in the future. Joanne said, lawyer, you know, it's one rarely time I don't agree with you. You are putting the sheriff as the victim. I am not trying to make the sheriff the victim at all here. As the victim and not the judge. What whatever are those people's opinion, it's not professional psychiatric evaluation. I agree. But I think, and I'll just tell you, because I've handled these types of cases, usually you don't have this much information that's pointing to a mental illness prior to and leading up the crime committed. I think they have a really, really good defense here with the mental illness. And by the way, it doesn't mean he's going to get off scot-free, right? It just means it drops down to the level of homicide. That's what we're talking about here. And I've said, I don't know how many different ways I can say it still doesn't make it right what Mickey Stines did. I don't, the vigilante justice is not something I'm here for. Taking someone's life is not something I'm here for. I'm specifically talking about, does he have a good mental illness defense for that diminished capacity? From my perspective, I think he does. If you think that makes me say he's a victim, I don't think he's a victim. That's what I'm talking about. This lawyer filing the lawsuit. I wouldn't feel bad. It's not your fault. Feel bad for the loss of life, of course, but it's not your fault Mickey Stines and the judge were mixed up in this and they did horrible things and they continue to do horrible things after you filed the lawsuit. It's not your fault. As the lawyer, in my opinion, maybe some people disagree with me on that. Okay, we're going to jump ahead a little more here.
Kentucky.
On the Monday, we took Sheriff Stines' deposition. He was acting odd, tense, whatever word you want to use.
On September 18th, the day before the shooting, Sheriff Stines makes an unusual request of a staff member of the sheriff's office. They said he told them to get his bulletproof vest. He insisted on going home to check on his wife, and he asked to have someone call and check on his daughter, Lila. That same day, September 18th, the day before the shooting, Sheriff Stines saw a doctor to discuss his mental health. A family member and many friends had been pleading with him to get this kind of help. Then, the day of the shooting, September 19th, Sheriff Stines went on a food delivery trip. It's something he often did. He went with the man who we know as Michael Clark, who says he was working for an addiction recovery program. Stines' defense wrote that a sheriff's office staff member said this about the trip, and that it mirrors what Clark told state police. Quote, "The recipients of the food were acting strangely and were wanting Stines to take the food up on a hill, and the recipients wanted to take them up on a hill on a side-by-side."
On the delivery, there was an incident where our client was asked to deliver to another place that was not the normal place where he did the delivery.
This is also interesting just to think about how much testimonial evidence, video evidence, where Mickey Stines was, CCTV video, video from the streets. I mean, there's going to be a lot of evidence in this case to talk about exactly what happened. And again, this timeline is something that's going to help the defense.
For this particular individual, and the witness will testify that at this point he was very concerned that there was an attempt to isolate him and to cause him harm.
13 minutes before the shooting, we see Sheriff Stines returning with Michael Clark, walking into the judge's chambers.
Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.